In a latest development in the ongoing face-off between the centre and the judiciary over the Collegium system, the Supreme Court of India today minced no words in expressing its disapproval of the comments made by certain government functionaries against the existing Collegium system. A Supreme Court bench comprising Justices Sanjay Kishan Kaul, A.S. Oka and Vikram Nath was hearing a contempt petition filed against the centre for not approving the Collegium recommendations within the timeline stipulated by the Supreme Court. During the hearing today, the bench was informed about certain comments which were made by people holding constitutional posts against the Collegium system. While urging the Supreme Court to issue a writ of mandamus or even initiate contempt proceedings against the government for sitting on the recommendations beyond the permissible period, the President of the Supreme Court Bar Association, that is Senior Advocate Vikas Singh, submitted today before the bench, and I quote here, "Persons in constitutional posts are saying that the Supreme Court does not have the power to exercise judicial review. That is a part of the basic structure of the Constitution. It is a little upsetting." Responding to this, Justice Kaul remarked today, and I quote again, "Tomorrow people will say basic structure is also not a part of the Constitution." For those of you who are unaware, Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar on two occasions, that is in his maiden Rajya Sabha speech yesterday and at a public function last week, had criticized the Supreme Court's judgment overruling the NJAC. The Union Law Minister Kiren Rijiju had also made certain public statements criticizing the Collegium system, which the Supreme Court of India had disapprovingly taken note of during the last hearing. During the hearing today, Justice Vikram Nath also urged the Attorney General to advise the government functionaries to exercise restraint and accordingly remarked with dismay, and I quote here, "Mr. Singh is referring to speeches which is not very good for. Making comments on the Supreme Court Collegium is not very well taken. You have to advise them to control there." Pertinently, the Supreme Court today underscored that the Collegium system is the law of the land which should be followed to the teeth, and that just because there are sections of the society who have expressed a view against the Collegium system, it does not cease to be the law of the land. The Supreme Court today also emphasized in no uncertain terms, while addressing the Attorney General as well as the Solicitor General, that the Constitution Bench judgments which have formulated the Collegium system for judges' appointments must be strictly adhered to. For context, the Supreme Court of India in its 2015 verdict had struck down the NJAC Act and the Constitution 99th Amendment Act of 2014, leading to the revival of the Collegium system of existing judges appointing judges to constitutional courts. The Attorney General today contended before the bench that there are two instances of the Supreme Court Collegium itself dropping the reiterated names which were sent back by the centre, and this gave rise to a perception that the reiterations might not be conclusive. However, the bench retorted to this by saying that such isolated instances will not give the government a license to ignore the Constitution Bench judgment which clearly laid down the Collegium reiterations as binding. However, the bench retorted to this by saying that such isolated instances will not give the government a license to ignore the Constitution Bench judgments which have clearly laid down that Collegium reiterations are binding. The bench also noted that the centre recently sent back 19 names, including 10 names reiterated by the Collegium. The bench added that it would be for the Collegium to address this particular issue. Urging the Attorney General to fulfill his duties as the senior-most law officer, the bench observed today, and I quote, "We expect the Attorney General to play the role of the senior-most law officer in advising the government of the legal position and in ensuring that the legal position is followed. The scheme of the Constitution requires this court to be the final arbiter of the law. The power to enact the law is with the Parliament, but it is subject to the scrutiny by this court. It is important that the law laid down by this court is followed, or else people would follow law which they think is correct." For more information on what transpired during the hearing today, you can refer to our detailed reports, the link to which has been given in the description box below. Thank you. I'm Aratrika Bhaumik for LiveLaw. Keep watching LiveLaw for more such updates.